Hi friends, I'm on my way to work with a student on interview skills, I've worked with before, and I thought on my way there I'd make a quick video on why progressivism fails so miserably and what the core problem is in terms of individuals who advocate progressive politics. So I've been thinking about it because, I had a big fight with Washington yesterday, and he's making his normal progressive arguments, which of course don't withstand any scrutiny. And I was trying to figure out, why am I having so much trouble communicating this with them? Because, for example, he was talking about how we should continue to have welfare and help those who need help in our society with government money. So I said, well, are you advocating in favor of means testing? And means testing is the way in which people, the way in which the government establishes that you're poor enough to deserve this money, right? In other words, they check to see what your means are, your overall earning and how much money you have and stuff. And he said, no. He understands that means testing is bad, that it worsens the problem they try to solve. Great. So I said, naturally, are you expecting to give all the people welfare, even the very rich people? And he said, no. Okay, so, most people would go, okay, I see what the problem here is. I can't give money to poor people only without determining who's poor. And Washington indicated that we would just use the existing protocols for determining that. Well, that's means testing, which is to say, if you can prove you're poor enough, you can get some sort of help from the government or something, depending on circumstances. We don't have a lot of welfare in this country anymore. I mean, we have a lot of welfare, but it's in the form of disability. We've got who knows how many people on disability, but quite a few, millions, and maybe half of them are actually disabled. I mean, I don't have any evidence for this off the top of my at hand, so to speak, but when you got a bunch of people, who are getting disability for anxiety, depression, obesity, alcoholism, I mean, you may not officially be able to get it for those things, but that's what the people are getting them for. I don't know what the rules are. Regardless, the point is, you can't both only give the money to poor people and not have means testing, right? You got to establish that they're poor somehow. And the problem is that incentivizes poverty. And when you have a housing subsidy, as long as you say this poor, but if you get a raise, you lose your housing subsidy, your raise could make you functionally poorer. The government's created a situation in which it's necessary then for these people, because they become addicted to the government stipend, it's necessary for them to not work as many hours so they can stay under that poverty line so they can get their free housing. I mean, if anybody has ever encountered or dealt with government programs like that of any sort, you'll know that nobody is concerned about actuality. Everyone's concerned about technicality. Do you meet this technical criterion? If you do, free money. Here you go. No questions asked, no concerns, no problems. Whether you need it or not is irrelevant, as long as you legitimately meet the criterion. So, the thing is, I can legitimately meet the criterion for disability easily enough because the legitimate criterion for getting disability payments is not actually being disabled. It's getting a doctor to sign off on something that qualifies as disabled. So, it's hoped by the government that this will address fraud, but it's not really fraud. So, what it is the disabilitization of normal problems that people have. Instead of actually solving them, they just go on disability. Well, obviously that's going to drain the country's resources pretty quick. But regardless, let's get back to the welfare point. So Washington just sort of indicates, well, those specifics of means testing, not means testing, whatever, that's not the important thing. The important thing is that the poor people get money. Okay, but it does matter that your money has smallpox on it, and that these people haven't been inoculated. Yes, they're poor. Yes, you're giving them money, but you're also giving them smallpox. And you say, well, we'll figure out a way to do it without giving them smallpox. It's not possible. You can't both only give money to poor people and not means test. You can't means test and not incentivize poverty. These things are well established. There's basically nobody left in the world who defends means-tested welfare programs of any intelligence at all. Why? Because the data is clear as day. Even the Democrats are saying, no, we don't want any more means-tested welfare. That didn't work. That entrenched poverty. That infantilized the poor. It allows the government to set conditions on how they spend their money. There's all sorts of problems. It distorts markets. It's like insanity. Well, in-kind benefits distort markets, because a lot of times they go, well, let's not give them money then. That way, what? That way, nothing. If you give them a housing subsidy or a health care benefit or something because they're poor, it's just as valuable, especially since you require people to have health insurance now. It's certainly as valuable as giving them the cash. So, people understand the value of things, regardless of whether it's cash or in-kind benefits. When you give them in-kind benefits, you distort markets. So the businesses who legitimately sell those things that you're now giving away have to compete against you, who's not operating like a business at all. You're just operating like a fiefdom of little squabbling rulers. So what is the basic problem with progressivism? The basic problem is a failure to distinguish between object and field. And a failure to understand that preserving the ecosystem, the integrity of the ecosystem, is ultimately the most impactful thing we can do. So, what that means is recognizing that as we do things, we set precedent about what can be done, what ought to be done, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. The arguments that we're making are points of analysis that people can reference back and forth between different points and stuff. But what's most important is the fact that if we're only making arguments, if we're not allowing our arguments to actually experience clash, real clash, then we're guaranteed to be wrong every time. So what Washington needed to do there was go, okay, I got to go either back to the drawing board because my welfare notion is obviously not going to work. He keeps saying, well, but surely we can take some money from the obscenely rich or whatever. Look, the thing is, that money that gets taken from the obscenely rich, quote unquote, would otherwise have been spent on something productive. It might have been used to hire people. It might have been used to invest in other companies that hire people. It might have been used to otherwise facilitate the economic processes of other individual human beings, which is what money does. It facilitates the economic processes of individual human beings. So, whoever you think of as obscenely rich, quote unquote, I guarantee they're not sitting around on a pile of $1 billion cash, just letting it sit there and looking at it all day long. They're investing it, they're spending it, they're whatever. They're moving money around, they're doing what people do with money. So that money is actually doing good work for society as long as you leave it be. Now, for somebody like Washington, or that nut job professor that I critiqued the other night, there's this notion that somehow if we could just get everybody to be of goodwill about things, then obviously we could come to a reasonable consensus about compromises, about exactly how much more money to steal from the rich, and exactly how to deal with X and Y. But the thing is, at the end of the day, what Washington doesn't seem to understand, and Professor Shit for Brains doesn't seem to understand, is that those contradictions don't resolve later. They just grow bigger and bigger and cause you more and more problems. They never resolve later. You can't just ignore the contradictions now and hope they'll resolve later. They don't, because it's implicit in the wrongness of what you're advocating for. You're saying that some third party can better decide how to spend my money than I can, that some other third party needs my money more than I do, and that yet another third party feels perfectly comfortable voting for the first third party to have more power to decide how to spend my money on the second third party. It's insane. So it's like Washington self-described as a socialist Democrat or democratic socialist. I mean, again, it's a field object thing. So if you want to be advocating for everybody in Social Security gets everything back they put in, at least. Because after all, it's a forced retirement program. Oh, okay, Washington agrees with that. Okay, well, then what about disability? Because those people aren't paying into it, but they're taking out of it. So that's going to cause the principal to dwindle and eventually run out of money, right? Okay, well, we'll just raise the cap. Okay, so you want to take out 33% of their check. It's 33% of a person's income for more than $100,000. Well, yeah. Okay, so the $33,000 you took from somebody as part of a forced retirement savings program, you're going to give it all back to them, right? Well, yeah. And when you raise the cap, so you take 80% of their money, you're going to give that all back to them, right? Yeah. Then how the fuck does that fund disability? It doesn't. This sort of contradiction continues to loom as people scratch their heads and go, but I know it's the right thing to do. No. You know what the laudable goals are. You know you want to be a person of goodwill who cares and is concerned for your fellow humans, and that's all well and good. I am too. But genuine care and concern for your fellow humans requires humility, a recognition that your vision for society is not the clearest. That the only thing that we can all agree on is that negative rights violations are bad. We should be able to all agree on that. I mean, even those who advocate that they're okay this time should at least be able to agree that they're bad if, they're bad to violate somebody's rights for no reason at all. So we have a guaranteed badness with rights violations, and we have only a flimsy promise of outcomes. As with Professor Shit for Brains, he's saying, oh, well, no, we're not going for communism. That didn't work. We learned from the past. Yeah, but if you justify shit the way you do, without any concern for consistency or logic or reason or anything about how shit actually works, then you're just going to create the next communism. Well, look, we were deciding things the right way. I know this time it didn't quite work out, and it caused all those millions of deaths and everything, and the atrocities and the torture and all that stuff. But look, that's a problem with communism. Now we're advocating a different thing: democracy, social democracy, socialist democracy, democratic socialism. That's what we're advocating now. It's different than communism. It's the same fucking shit. It's the same bullshit, ends justified the means bullshit. So it's going to cause the same fucking problems. Because there are no goodwill group of people whom we can trust to make our decisions for us. We have a legitimate purview of responsibility. It includes our moral decision making and our practical decision making. And the only person who's well suited to decide what I should do is me. Similarly for you. Obviously, there are universalist prescriptions, either stuff you ought to do in theory, people will claim are universal. Those never are. But there are absolutely universal prohibitions, moral prohibitions, and those can be logically deduced from the reality that one has to do something with the fact that your body is an object and thus is capable of being possessed, and therefore it's possible to make ownership claims upon a person's body, which requires us to address the question, is it okay to own another person, or at least own their body? The answer is no, never. It's never okay, because the one piece of property that you can't ever give up is yourself. You might be able to give up your body, or at least to say, here, use my body for this purpose for this time. You might be able to consent to that. You may be able to even actively seek that out. But you can't hand over your will. And so you can't own a person. In theory, you could own a body if we wanted to say that you can sell your own body, but you can't really sell your body because your will decides what your body does, not your body. And another person's will, you can agree to follow it, but you can't give over the keys to your will. So we know that as a consequence, you can't, in any legitimate sense, sell your own body. You can sell pieces of your body, in theory. But you can't sell yourself. As a consequence, we would say that slavery is always a rights violation. It's always a property rights violation, because it is taking ownership of something that is never acceptable for you to own, because it's unownable. You can't buy it from somebody else because they can't own it either. You can't buy it from the person whose body it is you claim to own, because they can't sell their will. And so any such contract is null and void and fraudulent. Besides which, there's a moral issue. Because we have inherently a moral obligation not to transgress upon the autonomy of other people, and because slavery necessarily transgresses upon the autonomy of other people, it's never morally acceptable to own another person, and it's inherently transgressive to do so. Thus, we wouldn't want to codify it into law as acceptable. Alright, I gotta tell you the address, huh?
The address you're going to, please?
Yeah, let me check my phone.